On this episode of Second Swing Thoughts, we are back in studio. We're covering a victory on the PGA Tour by Ben Griffin. And then we also have a couple of our master club fitters, Jake Montgomery and Harrison Arnold, talking fitting metrics, specifically attack angle, and how that can affect a club fitting and the club heads that are best for a golfer. So that and a whole lot more on this episode of Second Swing Thoughts. Hey golfers, I'm Drew Mahol, the Second Swing Golf, joined by Sean Bauer in the studio. Another episode of the podcast today, looking back at Ben Griffin's win. We're looking also, well, we got a couple wins actually to go over, and then we're going to dive into clubs that he played and some more fitting metrics as well with Harrison and Jake. Good episode coming here, Sean.
Yeah, fantastic episode. This is going to be, Jake and Harrison, both obviously fantastic fitters, and they're kind of breaking down a lot of different data points that our fitters use in fittings, and really good insights, for you, the golfer, to, pay attention to, just some tidbits of, today's about attack angle. I know they talk about land angle and spin rates and all this stuff and just how it all kind of relates to each other, but they kind of break it down specifically by each data point. So really good stuff. And then, Ben Griffin, another winner, and that's where we're going to start off with the turn here is, he picked up his third PGA Tour win of the season. Has to be the breakout star of 2025. Mm-hmm. Not only won, obviously, in the team event, then he wins the Memorial, wins this, part of the U.S. Ryder Cup team. What a year for him. And, it's the Worldwide Technology Championship. It was a pretty good field.
Yeah.
There was a lot of names. Sometimes these fall events, you don't get quite the names, but there was enough players there. You had Cam Young, you had JJ Spawn, so some other Ryder Cuppers there as well. So pretty impressive stuff what he's done here.
Yeah, and a lot of birdies to be 29 under. I don't care what golf course that is, or if the course is playing easy. That's a lot of birdies that you have to make, and so kudos to Ben Griffin for that. And you're right. I mean, his story is incredible. I know that it's talked about, or Ben talked about a lot all year. But what was it, 3 or 4 years ago? He was not playing competitive golf. I think, what was it? Was he selling insurance or mortgage or something?
Like Northwestern Mutual or something.
So, to fight his way back to where he's at now is really tremendous. So kudos to him. And then, the look at his bag is kind of funny. He's got an interesting set of sticks in the bag. We'll look at that with Harrison coming up. Kind of a cool dive there. Yeah,
you and Harrison will kind of break into, the specifics of the equipment, perhaps why he's playing it and what we're seeing in fittings. We'll just do a quick look at it right here at the top. Ping G430 Max 10K driver. Then he goes TaylorMade QI10 3-wood 7-wood, so you're seeing that high lofted fairway wood come into play. The Mizuno Pro S3 irons, obviously one of the new offerings from Mizuno, really sleek looking kind of player's cavity, almost a muscle cavity type iron. It's interesting that he mixes up his wedges. He goes Mizuno Pro T1 for kind of his gap wedge, and then sand and lob wedge goes in the TaylorMade MG5s. And then the big story of the week was with the flat stick. He'd been playing a Scotty Cameron, Tour Concept putter, a blade, switched into a Spider Tour X Black putter this week. So going from blade to mallet, and that's a trend, and he wins. So certainly an interesting decision, but not surprising when you see how many players are putting mallet in their bag these days.
Yeah, we talked about it at the Ryder Cup. I mean, you see it every week. There's just more and more mallets. Even Harrison alluded to it. Kind of alludes to it in the discussion about, he was at a final qualifier for the U.S. Open, with some bigger names that were there, doing some qualifying. A lot of the guys on Live, right, don't get into the U.S. Open automatically, so they're doing these qualifiers, and he basically says, I only saw mallets out there. Yeah. So that is the trend on when it comes to pros on tour, but you're seeing a lot of it with AMs as well.
I think Ben Griffin even said, because he had a pretty good putting year with his blade, but he said, everyone in front of me is using a mallet putter.
Yeah.
He's like, so I figured, why shouldn't I try this to see how much it can help me? So interesting stuff there. So that's on the PGA Tour. And then on the DP World Tour, we had Aaron Rai outlasting Tommy Fleetwood. So he beat the hottest golfer in the world in a playoff at the Abu Dhabi Championship. Pretty impressive stuff. That's another birdie fest there.
Yeah.
Rai barely missed birdie on 72nd hole to win regulation, but then goes and birdies the first hole in the playoff to kind of take down Tommy, which not a lot of people have been able to do for the last couple of months.
Yeah, he's on a world-class heater right now, but Aaron Rye was able to do it, and with a TaylorMade M6 driver, which is the TaylorMade M6 has been getting a lot of love this year. We go back to Justin Rose using those Fairwoods throughout the year. Obviously, his crazy finish at Augusta to almost win there, and of course, we use them at the Ryder Cup as well.
Yeah.
It's M6 6 years later.
Yeah. So what's the most unique part about Aaron Rye's setup? Is it his M6 driver, wearing 2 gloves, or his iron covers?
The most unique as far as professional golf, probably have to go with the iron covers. But I mean, there's not many guys using 2 gloves. I mean, there's a couple names you can think of, but it's he does it his way, and that's and it works. He's winning, one of the biggest events on the TP World Tour. So
I was reading an article where they kind of asked him about the iron covers, and he says it's kind of when he was growing up, it's how he took care of his clubs, make sure they stayed in good condition. And he says it kind of keeps him grounded to remember where he kind of came from and whatnot. So I thought that was kind of a cool reason.
That's cool perspective for sure.
So liked that. And then, wrapping up the turn here, last week we had a new low torque putter enter the arena. And, from arguably the biggest name in putting, Scotty Cameron. They dropped their OC, stands for Onset Center putters. They come in the Fastback and a Phantom. Is it the 11R?
Yeah, 11R. And so
two shapes. And
we do have some content coming on these. We get to go down to TPI, talk with Austin Rollinson, who is as in tune and as smart as anybody when it comes to putter design. It's kind of Scotty Cameron's right-hand man. And it's cool. It's cool that they basically took 2 of their most popular models from one from Studio Style, one from Phantom, and they just basically designed them with this Onset Center technology, they're calling it, but kind of that low torque feel and look to it. Really cool stuff. So stay tuned for that swing report video. I personally like how soft they felt when I got to do some testing.
Yeah, you started off hot in that testing too.
I did.
There might have to be a putter change come 2026 here for you. Just based on the first 4 or 5 putts, it was like center cup.
It was actually it was crazy because there was also a couple of those I didn't feel like I hit perfect, but they go in anyway. So that's kind of where we're at with putters in 2025. Here is you can make an imperfect stroke, an imperfect contact, and you can still make a 10-footer.
Yeah, I mean, Scotty Cameron putters are always going to look great. Aesthetically, they're always super pleasing. But when we were out there putting out on the green with them, I think I lean more towards the Fastback.
Yeah.
Just that studio style insert, the little, that's studio carbon steel.
Mm-hmm.
The little insert's just super nice, feels super soft, but I still feel like you get a little more feel in that versus the Phantom for me personally. And that's coming from someone who's played a blade putter. I'm one of the weird ones now. Used to be part of the majority, but someone who uses a blade putter, that's what I really appreciate about that. Was it was soft feeling, but I felt like I could still, I guess, feel it, if that makes sense.
I mean,
I don't know how to describe it.
Well, it's all personal preference, as we've come to know, but I think it is worth noting both of those are, you got kind of a mid mallet and you have a basically kind of a modern, larger mallet type shape. But both they're going to be well received. Yeah, they're really good. So
I agree, and those are just the latest additions to the zero torque / low torque, kind of putters that have been. That's the biggest trend of 2025 by far. I don't even think it's close. So interesting stuff there. But that wraps up the turn, and let's get right into our first featured interview. Harrison Arnold, Second Swing Master Fitter, part of the content team as well. Fantastic player, and you and him kind of sat down and talked about the clubs in Ben Griffin's bag. Yeah,
some good perspective from Harrison. Kind of gives his, because he's been fitting golfers throughout the year into these clubs, and there's a lot of them in Ben Griffin's bag that have been popular for him as well. So some good perspective here from Harrison. And now welcoming back on Second Swing Thoughts podcast, it is Harrison Arnold. We're going to go over the winning bag of Ben Griffin, the Worldwide Technology Championship. Not the first time he's won this year. He's been in the winner's circle a few times already. So we're familiar with his clubs, but let's kind of go through it again, Harrison, from your perspective. Right at the top, we've got an interesting driver, Ping G430 Max 10K. Not one you see a lot in tour players' bags, but talk to me about this one, how it works, you think, for Ben, and then also what you've seen in the fitting bay with it.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously that driver is built for maximum forgiveness, right? It's the highest MOI driver on the market. Doesn't get much more forgiving than that, right? Interested to see him playing it out of everything, but I think it kind of stands out really for how much he prioritizes hitting the fairway. I think that's really a thing that we kind of gloss over of how far the ball's going in the last 5 to 10 years. Is with it, we're just trying to get that ball as far down as we can. For someone like him, where precision is everything and it's really minor tweaks, maybe having this 10K max in there is making him hit a few more fairways, and he can get to his control distances on his yardage chart a little bit easier. Is kind of how I see that.
Yeah, I mean, I've played the 10K, and it is forgiving. It is stable. I know I sometimes and again, this is kind of being picky, but my one qualm with it was sometimes I would miss left, and I'd have that tendency, especially as someone who comes inside to out. I think if you're somebody who, prefer to play it, you have a kind of maybe inside to out path, and you're looking for something straight, consistent, forgiving, you can do a lot worse than this driver. So I think it's very applicable for a lot of people.
Exactly, and I think for him more so than anyone, he's got a lot of speed, so he's not really chasing distance. He's just chasing pure control, really.
Yeah, exactly. And then the shaft too. I know you wanted to hit on as well. The UST Mamiya Link. This is the prototype. V17TX. Talk to me about that shaft. What is he getting out of that?
Yeah, so it's still kind of in the process of them getting this out to consumers, but he's been on tour for a little while, so we kind of know a few little things. Very low in launch, very low in spin, which is kind of what you need if you're going to pair it up with that 10K max head, because it's more stable, more forgiving, tends to be a little bit higher in spin, so you need something like that. I think one really cool feature they've added into this shaft is that they've got a graphic on there that shows the launch and spin characteristics of it. So if we have some pictures of it, it has like 5 or 6 bars on there, and the first 1 or 2 are just colored in. So kind of a cool little thing that they're doing there. And I hope that more manufacturers kind of move to that.
Yeah, it would be kind of fun to see. I think we have like in our fitting matrices at Second Swing, there are labels on the shafts, just for the sake of the fitters, but just for the customer, for the golfer, that can help a lot too. So in the irons, Mizuno Pro S3. He's been using these all year. He's won now 3 times with these irons. What do you see from these? I just like how my personal favorite thing is how great they look.
Yeah.
But talk to me about what you see for him, and of course if you fit any of these in store.
Yeah. So obviously he's playing those kind of for that classic Mizuno look, classic Mizuno feel. All of the above. They're not quite the S1s, which are kind of that true bladed style. The S3 has a little bit more forgiveness to it. I use forgiveness very loosely there. It's still a bladed iron.
Correct.
But they tend to be a little bit lower in spin. So with his iron play kind of being a strength for him, the setup just gives him a touch more forgiveness, maybe a little bit more spin control in those windier conditions. He can probably flight those a little bit better just because they're a little bit lower in spin. I know that from my testing with them, that's kind of what I've noticed. I can just keep that ball flight down a little bit easier on those sort of partial shots. But in the fitting bay, I wouldn't say I've done a lot with this, because you kind of really are targeting a very niche golfer, right? A very low to mid handicap range who loves the look of and feel of a Mizuno blade. Yeah. But I have done a few combo sets this year where we've had those in the bottom half of the bag and we comboed it with something a little beefier on the top.
Sure. So, that makes sense. It's almost, so you'd say it's probably on the lower end of the spectrum as far as spin for this category.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So that's something to note too. There's a lot of players type irons like this out there. A little bit on the lower end of the spin there. So into the wedges, kind of a fun little combo here. He's got Mizuno Pro T1 for I think it's a 51 degree technically is where he's got it. Where he's got it set at.
Works out.
And then a TaylorMade MG5 duo of wedges in the 56 and 60. Talk to me about that setup there. What you noticed between those 2 different models.
Yeah, so I think he changes up the different models just because he wants to keep some familiarity in those sort of full shot clubs. So that, not surprised to see the T1 there. I think the more you can keep that consistent the whole way throughout the golf bag, especially with those full swings, you're just gonna. He's playing for precision, right? So I think that is the main reason he's doing that. I think those MG5s have been really great around the green. Off some really cool bounce and soul width on those. So I think he's probably tested a lot of those around the greens, and that's why he's probably picked those MG5s. But the T1s there more so as that full swing wedge to kind of keep it very similar to what he's playing in these irons.
It's kind of an interesting conversation. I know we've talked before, but if you use a wedge for a full shot, like even here, it's almost it's kind of in a way a combo set by putting Mizuno T1 wedge as sort of a full swing wedge at the bottom of a Mizuno set of irons there with the Pro S3s. Kind of an interesting way to blend that and then transition to your wedges that you will use for finesse, basically, around the greens. It's probably something that golfers can take for themselves as kind of an idea of how to make that transition, because I think there's a lot of questions usually about that gap wedge in the bag. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we see. I'm starting to see a lot more this year in the fitting bay was when I was fitting people for a set of irons, we're including that utility wedge, we're including that attack wedge, whichever brand, whether the U or the A, whatever they're chucking in there. Just kind of keep that familiarity in there, because if we're not going to use that for little partial shots, for sort of half swings, 3/4 swings. Well, there's no real need to go to a specialty wedge. Right, exactly. So, last thing, this is probably the most important part as far as his win here is concerned, is the switch he actually made with a putter. So, I feel like we see this a lot where players will make a putter switch and, immediately see results. And here the switch was to a TaylorMade Spider Tour X, a model that has had a lot of success on professional tours, famously gained by Scotty Scheffler the last couple of years, switched from a Scotty Cameron Concept 2 blade. So talk to me about the Spider Tour X, what you see from Ben, and then I don't know how much fitting you've done with Spider Tour X, but it's been a very successful lineup of putters for TaylorMade. Well, I've seen a very successful couple of years for that putter. Yes. So yeah, interesting to see kind of him do that this week. Not surprising. A lot of guys have kind of been doing that, but very much so that honeymoon period, right? Right. We'll see how long that one lasts. We thought the same thing was going to happen with Scotty Scheffler when he first moved. He started winning straight away, but the honeymoon period is extended quite a long way. But yeah, so I think a lot of guys I see kind of switching from that bladed style to a Spider. It's quite an easy switch, just because that Spider does set up very square like a blade does. But you get the extra MOI from that putter. You get a little bit more forgiveness. I think just visually it gives you a little bit more confidence. I think Fleetwood recently made that change too, to something close. Maybe not a Spider Tour X, but something close. He doesn't use the Tour X. I think he just used the Tour. Okay, I know it's something close. Yeah, he's using a Spider of some sort at least. But yeah, very unsurprising. See, just because of how square that thing is, it's a very easy switch. Sure. There's certainly I know around the Ryder Cup, we made note on the show of I think it was 21 or maybe 22 of the players in the Ryder Cup were playing a mallet versus a blade. And that is overwhelming number. Ben Griffin at the time was one of the blades. And so we're talking about almost every player in the Ryder Cup was using a mallet putter, is now using a mallet putter with Ben Griffin making a switch and then winning right away. So I think that's it's a very underrated part of the game. Blades look great and you want to play them, but if you can take some forgiveness, why not, right? I remember I was at the US Open final qualifying this year, and he had a bunch of the live golfers there, tour players. And I was astounded by how many mallets were on the green. It's especially the original DF1. Oh, I saw a lot of those on the back. Really? From interesting. Older tour players. I remember the Bryan brothers were playing with them and stuff, and so it was interesting just to see how much they're sort of valuing forgiveness in their putts. Yeah, it seems like it's a trend that's definitely catching on with the professional level, and you're seeing it now on the amateur level as well. Just enough players, and that's just what the options are too. There are a ton of mallets out there. So, sure. But yeah, that's the look at Ben Griffin's winning clubs. What you've seen in the fitting bays there, Harrison, as well. We thank you for joining for the breakdown. Of course. And that was Harrison Arnold going over Ben Griffin's winning clubs and kind of the feedback that he has seen in bays himself. A couple cool pieces of info there, but I think it's I think for me the coolest part is a 10K driver. You don't see a lot of those on tour where guys are you need that lower spin, more controlled kind of compact driver head for so many guys. That's what they prefer. Ben Griffin's like, no, give me the forgiveness.
Why not? Like you said, ball speed is not an issue for those guys. Right. So distance is not going to be an issue. Why not, on your miss hits, be able to go the same distance? Maybe you're spinning a little more, but spin's control. So right. Spin is control. That's what we've been told by a wise man before. So by several wise men. Yeah. So, well, now we can get into
featured interview number 2. This is Harrison's back in, talking with Jake Montgomery on some fitting metrics, specifically attack angle, and how you deliver the club at impact can really alter the course of a fitting and alter the course of what clubs are best for you.
Hello, golfers. Today I'm joined by Harrison Arnold. We did some testing in the bay to kind of demonstrate some of the different parameters that go into fitting. We're going to start off with angle of attack here. You'll see some data put up on the screen as well that we're kind of referencing here. But yeah, angle of attack, first of all, just kind of explain to the viewer, what is angle of attack?
Yeah, so angle of attack, all it really is how much downward pressure we put on the golf ball or upward pressure. So it's the way we're swinging into the golf ball. If we're swinging on with a positive angle attack, we're swinging more on the upswing. Negative, we're hitting more down into the ground, kind of making impact past that golf ball.
Yeah, and then kind of tell me, how does angle of attack change based on the club that you're using?
Yeah, for sure. So it really depends on which club you're hitting. I think that's there's 2 different techniques, right? I think with a wood, they're designed to be hit on the upswing, so they can launch nice high, spin nice and low. Irons, we want to put a bit more downward pressure onto that golf ball, so we can get that crisp contact we're looking for.
Yep, absolutely. So the first data points we're kind of looking at here is positive, neutral, and negative angle of attack when it comes to 7-irons. And as you can see here, there's a delta of almost 1,500 RPMs of spin from a positive angle of attack to the negative.
Yeah.
Explain to the viewers why we're seeing that.
Yeah, so the more down we hit on the golf ball, the more spin we're going to create because we're putting more pressure on that golf ball. Vice versa, when we hit up on the golf ball, there isn't as much pressure putting on that golf ball, so spin is reduced.
That's going to affect a great multitude of things. I mean, launching will be the first immediate one that you see. A lot of players that come in where they tend to kind of pick the ball off the ground, we're going to see high launch angles and low spin rates. There's not necessarily a right answer for this. Ideally, with an iron, you would want to be a little bit down, but there are plenty of elite players. I mean, even a fitter at our company used to play really high-level golf, won many, many golf tournaments. He had a slightly positive angle of attack with an iron. Most people you're going to see at an elite level will be swinging down on it 4 to 7 degrees.
Yeah.
Reason for that is you get a little bit more compression, like you said, more pressure on the ball, and you see a little bit more controlled spin rates, but you can get away with having a more positive angle of attack. But when it comes to an iron especially, a more downward angle of attack will generally get you more stopping power. And then as we look at it with the driver, I mean, that's where we really see angle of attack kind of negatively affecting players.
Yeah.
A negative angle of attack here, -4, which is a very, very common attack angle we see. I mean, I've seen as far as -9. So, I mean, that's pretty reasonable there. Our spin rate's at 4,100, whereas if you look at even neutral, you're at 2,200. So, I mean, there's a big delta there. Kind of explain to me, how is that going to change what we see downrange?
Yeah, so I think that's the biggest thing, right? When we're looking at an attack angle and a fitting, mainly you can kind of get away with some stuff with an iron, but mostly it's the driver that's going to make the biggest difference. So by hitting down on that driver, all we're doing is create a lot of spin. So we're going to talk about optimal spin rates and launch angles when we're in a fitting for a driver or a fairway wood. But if we're hitting down on the golf ball, sometimes we got to kind of change our expectations of how close we're going to get to optimal, because the more we hit down that golf ball, the more spin we're going to create. So yes, optimal might be 23 to 2,500, but if we're hitting 4 degrees down on this, well, we're starting at 4,100 here. We might only just get into the sort of low to mid 3,000s, and that's still a win, right? That's still getting us closer to what we'd class as optimal. So it's very important to kind of understand, like, how you swing the golf club can determine like how much we can really get out of the golf ball.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone's optimal is going to change based on how they deliver the club. For some people, I mean, getting into the 3,000s is a huge win. I had a player that was very, very high speed. He was a little across, but he was about like 4 or 5 down. And I mean, we got his spin rates into the 3,000s, and just by doing that, we gained him about 35 yards, I want to say. So optimal is different for everyone. There is a general rule of thumb. Like if you could just pick a spin rate, you'd want to be kind of typically mid 2,000s. But optimal is going to change by person. And then we had a couple questions we just want to make sure that we hit while we're on this topic. How does angle of attack affect the loft that you should play?
Yeah, for sure. So when we hit down on the driver again, we're actually taking loft away. So we're going to be launching it really low. So we need to add, so when we see a player that comes in the bay, we're going to have to add a lot of loft to the driver. So something like a 12-degree G440 max, great option for people who do get quite steep on the golf ball and launch it pretty low. because well, we need to kind of get you back into those right launch angles, I should say.
Yeah.
So that we can kind of get you as close as we can to optimal.
Absolutely. And then looking at the data as well with the driver, I noticed that the spin rate is actually a little higher when we were swinging up at it. A higher angle of attack or a more positive angle of attack will actually add dynamic loft, which is going to cause you to launch it higher and spin it higher as well, which is why for players that are very up on the golf ball, they're typically playing a very low lofted driver because they are creating that loft themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And if we look at kind of those dispersion patterns as well, neutral being kind of that tightest dispersion, you can see a real big jump in distances too. When we start swinging down on that golf ball, we're creating a lot of spin. Look how big that dispersion is there, right? It's not to say swinging across the golf ball or down the golf ball doesn't mean you can't hit great shots, because as we can see, there is a few down there that work pretty well. But overall, when we're hitting up on the golf ball or even just hitting neutral, we're in a really good spot there. And I think it's important to kind of look at the differences between like iron play and wedge play to hitting a wood. It's almost like two completely different sports, right?
Absolutely.
We're hitting down on one thing, hitting up on the other way, which I think a lot of people don't understand until we kind of, which is great when people come into fittings, we can kind of educate people, because it's almost like doing like the long jump and the high jump, both jumps, but completely different techniques, right? So it's important to kind of understand why we want to see you swing a little bit up on the golf ball. If we're really struggling and we can get you to neutral on the day, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. What conditions do steeper players struggle with versus shallow players?
Yeah, definitely anything in winter, because of that extra spin, the ball's going to be up in the air way longer. The conditions are just going to take over, right? So someone who's a little bit shallower, it's going to be a little bit more lower ball flight, might start to dive out the air, but they're going to be a lot better there. I would say those sort of more, because the spin's a little bit less, I do tend to see people who are on that lower side, who are swinging a little bit more on the up, who wait a little bit too far on the up. Yes, that can be a negative as well, because the spin's so low that we might be able to keep the ball in the air long enough.
Yep. What causes a player to be steeper or more positive on the ball?
So a lot of it kind of comes down to club path as well. So like swinging, it's very hard to swing up on the golf ball if you're more than 5 or 6 degrees from out to in. Because you've got to really rearrange where your body's moving to start hitting up on that golf ball.
Yep.
Not say you can't, but I would say the majority of people I see in the fitting bays, they are swinging. If they're hitting down it, they're also chopping across it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think, I guess, a good question I have for you, Jake, is if we have someone who comes in the bay, get fit, we get them into as good of a drive as we can get them into for the day, like we talked about, getting as close to what their optimal is. If they start to take lessons over the winter time, really put a lot of effort in, and they kind of change their angle of attack, do you think it's worth coming in to get a refit or have a double check to see what's going on?
I would say you definitely don't need to get refit for a completely new driver. I would say the only thing I would pay attention to, and I tell players to look at, especially if we're working on angle of attack in the fitting, let's say I fit someone in 11 degree, they're swinging 2 degrees down on it. We might just need to adjust that to 9.5 or 10. If we do really get that angle of attack up to positive 1 or 2, we might just see a little higher ball flight than we were looking for. But typically, we're not going to see too much of a downrange dispersion left to right change unless they are also working on club path along with attack angle. I'm always apprehensive to refit someone after they've had a few lessons because they're still kind of developing that new swing. If you go through a whole season of swing changes and you really feel like you've dialed them in and you've changed your attack angle, your club path, your face angle, there could be some merit to getting refit. But if we're just tweaking a couple things, usually just a couple tweaks on the driver will be just fine.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of kind of an adjustable driver, right?
Exactly.
We can make these little changes to make sure that we don't have to completely restart again, right?
100%. Well, I think this has been a great conversation on angle of attack. I hope you've learned something out there, golfers. If you want to work with a fitter like us, stop in any one of our stores or visit us online at secondswing.com.
And that was Jake Montgomery and Harrison Arnold talking attack angle. And then it also turned into kind of a conversation on a couple other metrics of loft and spin and how, it's true, they all are related to each other, but how steep you are, it changes the loft with which is shown at impact. It also changes from that point on the spin that's generated. So it's all related, but they also all matter in a big way when it comes to, recommending what's best.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the best thing about this little series here is it's just, taking the viewer and the golfer deeper into what these numbers mean. you can say I'm a steep player or, I swing up, I'm a shallow, right? But how steep are you? How shallow? Because that impacts, I came in on my driver fitting. I went over to the Minneapolis store. I had TJ fit me, and I was coming down super steep. So we went into, and I need some forgiveness, but we had to go into like the lowest spin models. Well, then after working on the driver a little bit, I ended up getting into a GT3, which is still low spin, but not quite, the triple diamond, the elite triple diamond, which was just, I was hitting that thing well, the triple diamond, but it was just like, it was a little too intimidating for me. GT3 just seemed to fit my eye a little better, but, it just shows you, some good information for all the golfers out there going into a fitting, because there's a lot of numbers thrown at you. Here's kind of our fitters' expertise of breaking them down.
It's also good to know, too, what is a steep attack angle or what is shallow, and they can kind of provide that info as well. So then when you go into a fitting bay and you swing your first 5 or 10 swings, you have an idea of where you're at, and it can give both you and the fitter kind of a head start there.
Yeah, I think I had like 7 or 8 down.
Yeah, that's pretty steep.
First couple with the driver.
That's pretty steep.
It's my big struggle because I swing irons. It's great. I'm great. Irons are the strength of my game. Driver's the weakness, and that's why, because I'm swinging it like an iron. And so it's been a year-long process of trying to figure out how to swing a driver.
Well, progress. So that's what it's all about. So
what else we got coming up on the YouTube channel this week?
Yeah, we got all kinds of stuff. Of course, we have I referred to it earlier, but the Scotty Cameron OC kind of review from TPI. Really cool to be on site there for that. Then we've got several fun comparisons. If you haven't seen it yet, we have a really fun one that was published actually last week on a sort of a wet versus dry golf ball test with Harrison. That was really cool findings from that one, where
some of those spin numbers were insane.
It's wild. And all we did was take a spray bottle and kind of just, I think the word that Harrison would use was spritz the ball once, and just kind of how it would be out on in the rough, maybe when you're out playing at 6 a.m. in some dew. And it's wildly different. So I would check that out as well. Plus, all kinds of fun comparisons coming. We've had Emma Carpenter in for some filming sessions. Of course, we got Harrison and Jake as well. So we got a lot of stuff coming.
Yeah, on the second swing side, of course, it was Veterans Day on Tuesday this week, so we have a special Veterans Day sale going on for all active and retired military members. So head to secondswing.com for more information on that. It's also the holiday season is quickly approaching. Our holiday gift guide just dropped. Pretty much has clubs and equipment and deals and gift ideas for every type of golfer, for every budget. A lot of work goes into this every year.
Yeah.
Check it out. Lots of awesome stuff in there available. So, you can shop for your favorite golfer, or if you're your own favorite golfer, take advantage of those deals yourself. So lots of good stuff there.
Yeah, the holidays are almost here. So we appreciate you joining us for this episode of Second Swing Thoughts. Make sure you're subscribed, whether that's YouTube or whether that's your favorite audio platform. Make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you next week.